Hi, my name is Joseph from ACS Composite. If you're watching this video, you probably just purchased one of our C7 hoods. We do have our ZR1 hood and 07 hood. And now you're probably down to installation. So always pre-install your hood before painting. I'm here today to show you a few tips. So we do get a lot of calls sometimes asking the different adjustments. And the first thing people refuse to do and should be doing is read the instructions. We ask you to remove the front bumper. You may ask why. The front bumper removal is critical in a hood installation. The way a C7 is built is actually the hood goes on, then the fenders, and then the bumper. That means if you're installing a hood, you need to reverse the process. Now the fenders don't have to come off, but the bumper does for the adjustment bolts, which are located right here. The way a C7 is built, it is a composite car. It's actually built on two hydroform rails, which are located right here. And the side rocker door jamb piece is actually glued to the car. And that basically defines how the rest of the car comes together. We do know the build assembly tolerance is pretty forgiving in that area. So we've seen it from car to car, probably as much as a 1/4 inch, but it's okay. It doesn't mean the car's poorly built. It just means that's their first item on the car. Everything else has a tolerance to accept that. Until you get to the last pieces where things start getting tight. The hood is one of those items. And the way we like to do it is basically pre-fit your hood, obviously, and then you got the adjustability. So we like to remove all the hardware off the hood, so your rear latches are off the hood at this point. You can install it onto the mounting hinges. There's two bolts located on the back side, and now you need to make adjustments. The first one you want to do is basically relieve any potential stress you may have on these hinges. There is a small variation this way if we want horizontally on the width, and this is basically taken care of by these two M8 bolts on the rails themselves. So when you do this, you're relieving it. There's a square notch on this mounting bracket, which is about 3/4 of an inch, if not an inch, with an M8 bolt that gives you tons of rooms to basically move it around. You want to make sure these are parallel again, assuming they're not. Once this is done, you then have to worry about the adjustability. So these two will give you a left to right and also a front to back. This tip here needs to be about 3 to 4 millimeters behind the fender itself. So before you dismantle your car, take a look at your stock hood. Try to basically study the gaps beforehand. It's pretty hard to beat what you had, but at least it gives you a guideline. And because it is a front tilt hood, you do want to get clearance. You don't want to go super tight. You may actually interfere the bumper itself on that leading front edge. You don't want that, especially not when you're fully painted. So this is taken care of with these two bolts here. They'll give you left to right, front to back. Then we have the two vertical bolts. These will actually help you with the height. You took care of the front of the hood. Now we're looking at the adjustability of the rear latch mechanism. So again, reverse hood tilt. The latch is located here, a little different. So what we've done is when we did the front, these latches or U latches were off the car. Now your next step is to take care of this area here. Usually when these are off, I'll play with the bump stops, which are located on the hood in this area. I'll try to get this to the right spot. And then we have the latch mechanism. Obviously, you reinstall the hardware. It's right off the stock hood. We have two 10 millimeter bolts located here. And basically, this lets you adjust the latch itself. This gives you the opportunity to move it up and down, front and back. You want to make sure you're in line. So when you close the hood, you get a nice firm close. So we do see a lot of adjustments have to be done. We try to eliminate it. So our plan of attack here, or our game plan, is really to take it step by step. Bumper off, the front, and then finally move into the back as the whole thing is assembling down. So once you do all this, then you're moving on to the prep and painting of your hood. My particular hood here, I painted the inside carbon flash black. I've done some cars with a satin black finish. So there's different taste and different requirements. I like the black because when I'm driving, I see the cal, and on a bright colored car, I find it distracting. But again, to each their own. And then you got the top surface. So our hoods are not ready for paint. We don't claim that. Our hoods are basically the highest quality that we offer. They're actually designed to be OEM worthy, meaning they don't vibrate at any potential speed. You could go to any speed your heart desire. No hood pins are required. We don't mandate you to put hood pins, or as a disclaimer, they are solid. They're designed with crush initiators in it. That means if you have an accident, the hood will crumple. So you don't want the strongest hood in the market. You actually want a smart hood on your car. So if you do have a front-end collision, you want this thing to bend. You don't want it to become a guillotine and chop your head off. So all these are things we've designed into the hood itself. And then there's safety. Our hoods all have metal brackets inside, which is a system that basically reinforces the latch and the hinge point. So there's a large metal bracket that goes from here all the way to the back, including the bump stop receptacle. This is actually for safety. It actually hooks onto this area here to another mounting plate. So all this is reinforced. They're inside the hood. So it's included. It's part of the hood inside. You don't see it when you buy it, but it's inside. Same thing with the front. You don't want to mount to fiberglass. So we see a lot of replica imported hoods that are basically done that way. Good product out of the box, but really terrible when it comes to usage on the highway or at the track. So these are all things to consider. And then finally, you have the prepping. So every hood does need to be final sanded. When we make our hoods, we actually produce 2 skins, bond them together. We do prep and prime them twice. So we do the bulk of the work for you, but the final sanding is left to the painter. So each painter will have its own process, its own paint system. We use a PPG paint system ourselves, so we use products that are compatible with that, but it will be compatible with any paint your painter will decide to use. The top coat of our hood is finished with a vinyl ester primer. So this is sprayed on, and this is done to seal the fiberglass itself. That's what gives it its durability and fiber print resistant over time. So that's the material you don't want to sand through, but you could go ahead and block sand it. So what we suggest is to give it a very quick, light block sand. We usually go with something like a 200 grit, something pretty coarse, because all we want to do is break the orange peel. We're not sanding through it. We're actually going through a 30% orange peel removal at this point. They want to break that skin off that particular primer. We actually then leave it air overnight. So if there's any gas entrapped in the primer itself, then that will gas off. The product or the material itself is an RTM material. We know that's fully cured, manufactured in a heated tool. The primer is cured, but over time, we do know that it doesn't trap some gas. So that just makes the primer that much harder. The next day when you come back, then you tackle your finishing. At that point, you can move on to like a 300 or 400 grit, move your way up. And I would suggest to then put a sealer or a primer that's compatible with your paint system. That's the bridge between the ACS finish and your painting system. And then you move on. So that'll be the rest for the top skin. For the inside, we use a vinyl ester primer, a lot easier, a lot softer to sand. And it really depends on what you want to do. This particular car was a show car, so we did all the finishing on the inside. Some people will do murals. Some people just want to flat black it and take care of it. So you do have details to take care of, like on the seams. And again, the hood's not ready for paint. So again, we do get calls sometimes of people saying, hey, why do I have to put so much work into it? Well, it all comes down to technique and what you're looking for. So hopefully this helps you, gives you some guidelines. There's instructions included in the box that guide you through most of these steps when it comes to adjustments. And again, I can't say it enough. Take off the front bumper. It may take you about 30 minutes to take off the front bumper, but it's like working with the lights on. You can see what you're doing and all the adjustments are available to you. So go ahead, enjoy the hood. It is spectacular. It will transform your car and you won't regret it at the end of the day.